Hey everyone, welcome to NiCHE Conversations. Today we are talking about place, the place where you live specifically, and the place where I live, Saskatoon, is real cold today. When we woke up it was -40 and with a real feel of -60. Both of our guests today are here. Tina Adcock and Tina Loo, and it always takes a while to get three people in. So Tina Adcock has arrived. Oh, that was pretty smoothly. Usually when I have three people, it takes like 10 minutes to get. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to NiCHE Conversations, episode 7 of season 5. I'm Jessica DeWitt, one of the editors here at the network in Canadian history and environment. And today I am joined by Tina Adcock and Tina Loo. Tina Adcock, can you start off by telling us about yourself?
Sure, thanks, Jessica. I am an assistant professor of history at Simon Fraser University in metropolitan Vancouver, and I teach Canadian history and environmental history.
Wonderful. Tina Loo?
Ditto, except my last name is different and I'm at UBC. I teach Canadian history and environmental history at UBC Vancouver.
Yes, we're very lucky to have the preeminent Tinas of our field here today.
A small group, but powerful.
Yeah,
But
very
powerful.
powerful, very powerful. So in December, we published a 3-part series called The Place Where You Live, which was based on an assignment from your graduate global environmental history course. And that's what we're going to be chatting about today. And I wanted to start off just by could you tell us about, what was the Orion magazine series, The Place Where You Live, that inspired this assignment, and why were you drawn to it as a teaching tool?
I got it. I guess I'll start us off.
Sure.
Orion magazine. It was a magazine that I was a longtime subscriber to. So if you don't know Orion, it's worth checking out,
Mm-hmm.
at least online. It's this Orion is published by a nonprofit organization, so it has no advertising, and it features nature writing and
Mm-hmm.
art and photography. And really, its premise all along is, and this relates to the place where you live, is that people are responsible for the world that they live in, and
Mm-hmm.
that most people come to understand this responsibility as they develop a kind of personal connection with nature. And that's what Orion is all about. It's really for people who are engaged with environmental humanities, I think it's worth looking at because it really has a lot of strong storytelling, both in words and visually. So it featured the place where you live for a long time. It doesn't anymore, but they're archived on the site. Um, and these were just meant as very shorter than what we asked our students to do, short essays um, that asked people to just reflect on what connected them to place and what the nature of that connection was. And this is where I don't think we included this in our instructions, but really what Orion was interested in, because it's also forward looking, is what were your hopes and fears about that place? What would you do to protect it, to prepare it for the future, to make it better? And this became particularly salient as the realities of climate change came in. So Orion started in 1982. I'm not quite sure when this feature started, but certainly it may have had to do with increasing concern about global warming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Other Tina, do you have anything to add to that, or we want to move on? Okay.
This was Tina's baby in terms of the assignment. So
Excellent. Okay. Well, in the series, Tina Loo wrote about Lake O'Hara, and Tina Adcock, you kind of wrote more about place in general, reflecting on the idea of place. But I wondered if both of you could kind of share for us one of your personal, an aspect of your personal relationship to place.
Sure. Should I go first, Tina Lou?
Sure.
Sure. So, I mean, like many academics, I work in a place that I did not grow up, and in
Mhm.
this particular case, it's a place with a climate and an environment that's quite different. So, I grew up in Edmonton on the Canadian prairies, so extreme
Mhm.
temperatures. You know,
Yes.
Jessica, you live in Saskatoon, so I don't need to tell you about the extreme temperatures on the prairies, and much drier too than obviously living on the Pacific coast of North America. So. I find that a lot of my sort of personal engagements with place, and especially the place where I live, is learning how to feel at home in a place that is, in a sensory sense, and in many other ways, very different from the place that I grew up.
Yes.
And so I've lived in Metro Vancouver for over a decade now, and I still don't feel at home here, but in a sense, but in another way, this is my home now. So I've done sort of various things to kind of make myself feel at home here: hiking, nature photography. Jessica, you might remember I used to post nature photographs on my
Yes.
Instagram all the time before I
Yes.
had a baby and got busy with other things, unfortunately. I'd like to get back to that at some point. But I think one of the ways that I've really kind of come to feel at home here is through gardening. So we have a house with a beautiful garden that was landscaped by the people who owned this house before us. And so kind of taking care of the plants there, learning about them, because they're so different from plants on the prairies, learning about them, learning how to care for them, has really just kind of put me in touch with this place and made me feel at home. And I think one of the beautiful things about gardening is it makes all the metaphorical language we use about the natural world real. So
Mhm.
I still remember this time that it was sort of early spring, and I was pruning this Japanese maple shrub that we have in our backyard, and I was noticing how easily all the brittle, dry twigs snapped off. So I didn't even have to use the secateurs. I could just kind of snap them off carefully with my hands. And
Yeah.
that was the first time I really got to grips with what the word deadwood meant in reality. Like everyone knows about it
Yes.
as a kind of turn of phrase, but this was literal deadwood in front of my eyes that I was just snapping off the shrub. So I just think it's so cool how just engaging with nature through gardening can really sort of make you feel at home in a place and getting to kind of know a place better.
Wonderful. Tina Lou?
That, that was a terrific reflection. I knew I shouldn't have let you go first. Well, I wrote about Lake O'Hara, and so I think my engagements with place are bodily, through the
Mm.
senses. And so I do, right now I'm talking to you from the other side of the Rockies. So not in BC, I'm in Alberta. I'm in
Mhm.
Canmore and it's cold outside, but mostly I love this place and come often because of hiking, which is really what I talked about in my Lake O'Hara piece. And I think that in the same way Tiana talked about coming to know nature through gardening, I came to know uh, the mountains through trudging up those slopes and just
Mhm.
understanding what elevation really meant and what elevation really felt like, and getting up to the top and of
Yeah.
wherever it was I was going to a pass or something, and then being able to see the weather in ways that I'd never seen before, because you can see systems come in and lightning approach. And as somebody who lives most of the time in Vancouver, there is no
Mhm.
lightning. And so coming to know nature through the absolute terror of I have to get off this very, very vulnerable place I'm in, um, was a really good visceral lesson about both weather systems and exposure, and
Mhm.
the kinds of forces that had shaped the places I love to be. So very much um, th- understanding places through the body, and also through the relationships
Mhm.
with other humans that I was hiking with,
Yes.
because we come to know uh, are those the many of the closest relationships I have, friendships say, have come through sharing an experience with a place with these other people.
Yes.
And so it's places are people in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ooh, I love that. I love that. I love both of your reflections and they're resonating with me. And I think about place a lot. And like Tina, I am, I grew up in very rural northwestern Pennsylvania, only child in the woods, deep, deep connection to place, bodily connection to place. And I have such a melancholic yearning for that place and that time. But at the same time, as I've written about in the Problem of Place series for Environmental History Now, I'm not that person anymore, right? So I have this melancholic longing for that landscape, but at the same time, I don't really feel like I can go back. Perhaps I can visit in the future, but it won't be the same. Um, and so I've lived in Saskatoon for 13 and a half years now. Wow. But I'm still trying to love this landscape, this place. And like Tina, taking care of my backyard or being really, really intentional about local exploration is a way that I keep trying to really come home. Um, but yeah, anyways, place. It's really fascinating. I Everyone should think about it in these terms, and like it's a really fruitful exercise in self-exploration, I think. Yeah, so you turned your students' responses to this assignment into a three-part series. So I thought we'd wrap up by, just telling people what they were going to find when they explore this series.
Yeah, absolutely. And a shout out to Heather Green, one of NiCHE's editors, who was super great about just getting the ball rolling and excited about sort of continuing the long tradition of kind of posting student work on the Otter, which is super cool,
Mm-hmm.
a cool way to kind of see the future of environmental history. So in this particular assignment, most people, perhaps unsurprisingly, given what we've just been talking about, chose to write about home or a sort of place that was fairly close to
Yeah.
home. But of course, like many, graduate student courses, and indeed in the Lower Mainland kind of courses more generally, people's homes are very geographically distant from each
Mm-hmm.
other. So we had a sort of clump of students from the Lower Mainland. We had some students from elsewhere in Canada and from the United States, and we also had students hailing from China and India. So the way we decided to kind of group together their posts was sort of, kind of broad geographical regions. So our first post focuses on what we call southwestern British Columbia, so kind of the Lower
Mm-hmm.
Mainland and the Fraser Valley. The second post looks at continental North America, so from the Rocky Mountains to Chicago and Manitoba in between. And then the third post looks at China and India, so two posts on various places in China and one post on India. So what can you kind of find, kind of generically speaking, in this series? Students have some beautiful illustrations to their posts. So many of them are photos that they've taken themselves or photos that their family members have taken. So it's a sort of a real privilege to be able to share them here. So I think they really give a kind of multi-sensorial sense of place. So not just through the written word, but through actually seeing some of these really stunning images of places.
Mm-hmm.
And I think another thing I really appreciate about this series is that there's a variety of student voices. Personal essay writing is a very varied genre, right? And so we really get a very broad, we get a lot of variety in terms of how students write about places. We've got sort of posts that are kind of take critical self-reflections on places, kind of questioning, things that they thought to be true about a place that they're kind of understanding differently as they get older. Some are sort of very reflective on their kind of pasts in a place. Some posts paint really pretty word pictures, so very vivid senses of place through words, and some really tug at your heartstrings. So I think, especially in an era where we're all very worried as teachers about kind of AI slop, it's just such a lovely thing to kind of hear the
Mm-hmm.
real person
Yeah.
come through in each of these posts. And in my conclusion, I sort of pick out four themes that seem to unite these students' experiences of these widely different spaces. So I say first that places are bound up with people, again, which Tina Loo has sort of beautifully expressed in her own reflection. Second, that places also derive their meaning from a person's sense of home. And again, that kind of emerges through the fact that a lot of
Mm-hmm.
these students selected home places or places close to home. Third, that places change over time because we ourselves change and the world changes around us. And I think, Jessica, you expressed that really beautifully in your reflection on place just now, that we can't ever go back to that place because we're different and the place is different.
Yeah.
And fourthly, that places are political.
Yes.
So, you know, places are always political, even when we don't consciously recognize that, or even when not everybody recognizes that. But I think, especially in 2025, we're really getting the sense more than ever, perhaps, that how we look at and interact with places and how we make changes in them absolutely have to do with big P politics, but also small p politics.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, I found it a really lovely read, really reflective, and every essay has something really beautiful to say. And I want to thank you both for joining me today, as well as sharing this work with us. And I encourage everyone to check out the Place Where You Live series. You can find it on our series page on NiCHE. Yeah, thank you for joining me today, Tina and Tina.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, Jessica.
Yeah, this was fun. Take care.
Bye-bye.